breaking down the deals, data, and disruption shaping global markets. You're listening to The Daily Ledger with Dennis Sert.
Yo, what up? Welcome to, I keep saying welcome to, it doesn't even really make sense. Today's Friday, October 31st. It's Halloween. And I am your host, Dennis Sert. Glad to be with you here today. We got some stories to get into, and then we're going to be doing some trades with Byte AI. What we got on the news desk is some rallies by Amazon, Apple, and then we got some analysis regarding, learning curves. So children struggling to read after the post-COVID / post-LLM era. And we're going to talk about how basically there are complex and circular deals in the biggest AI companies. And so that was on the front page of the New York Times. So we're going to get into all of that. So let's just get started. Okay, I shared the wrong thing, so give me an extra second here to share the right thing. There we go. Yeah, sorry about that. Okay. Amazon stock surges as AWS delivers the AI cloud growth investors wanted. Amazon stock jumped late Thursday after the tech behemoth reported third quarter results ahead of Wall Street views. Amazon's cloud business delivered the sales growth acceleration investors have been looking for over the last few quarters. Yeah, so basically, Amazon did really well in Q3. Their stock jumped quite a bit, and it seems to be fueled by a 20% year over year revenue growth with AWS. So cloud computing, I guess it grew. Their revenue grew to $33 billion, which was the fastest pace of rate of growth since 2022. So that's kind of cool. And it looks like their earnings and revenue beat expectations. Their Q3 adjusted EPS came in at $1.43, while the estimates were at $1.14. So they beat their earnings per share there. Looks like Amazon sort of delivered this kind of rosy looking holiday season. So their Q4 looks pretty good apparently, because of the holiday season, as I said, and then with AI tailwinds, supposedly. So whatever that means, of course, whatever that means, most likely their $4 billion investment in Anthropic closed. So they became a minority shareholder in Anthropic. So that's interesting. So yeah, so cloud computing did pretty well. Amazon wasn't the only one who did well though. Apple did pretty well too in Q3. This article says Apple Q4 earnings hit record high. Tim Cook says there's a very strong demand for latest iPhones. Apple forecasts double-digit sales growth for iPhones during the holidays. Okay, so this is Q4 earnings. The title's a little bit weird because we just finished Q3, but what they're doing is they're forecasting double-digit sales growth for the holiday season, aka Q4. So a little wonky headline, but whatever. Apple sold a lot of nice. I guess interesting. Yeah, because I remember a few years ago, Apple stopped stopped having to report the exact number of iPhones that they sold per quarter. I wonder if that's actually published or if this article is just like being really vague with Apple sold a lot of iPhones to close out its fiscal year. How many iPhones did Apple sell in Q3 2025? Okay, so Apple sold 58.6 million iPhones in Q3 2025, July to September, according to global smartphone shipment data. This marked a nearly 3% increase from the 56.9 million units shipped in Q3 2024, setting a new September quarter record for Apple and helping drive the company's overall revenue to 102.5 billion for its fiscal Q4, aligning with the calendar Q3 period. Okay. So fiscal Q4 is the calendar Q3. I just want to double check something real quick. So does Apple have to, or I thought Apple stopped having to disclose iPhone sales at the end of quarters. Yeah, in November 2018. So I remembered correctly. They argued that the unit counts were no longer the best metric for their business health. Oh, okay. So they're reporting the revenue, but not the unit numbers. Okay. So that's what's going on. Okay. Specifically, Apple tallied a little more than 49 billion in phone revenue for the September quarter, the last 3 months of the 2025 fiscal year. That's a 6% increase. Okay, so we just learned that from Grok. More significantly for Apple's future prospects, Chief Financial Officer Kevin Parikh told Wall Street analysts during an earnings call that Apple expects double-digit growth in iPhone sales during the 3 months ending this December. That would translate to the best quarter ever for iPhone sales. Oh man, I kind of want to land a joke, but it's going to take me a couple seconds to load that. Give me a second. Okay, so that took a little bit, sorry, but so when, oh man, is it going to play audio? Hopefully it does. But when they say that would translate to the best quarter ever, I just suddenly thought of this clip where they ask Nathan Wade, or the attorney asks Nathan Wade in this like scandal, and then he goes, ever? And then he starts like thinking about it for like 20 seconds. Yeah, and then he thinks about it for like 15 seconds. So I just skipped forward like 5 times and said no. Anyways. Okay. That would translate to the best quarter ever for iPhone sales. It's where okay, so I could read the rest of the article, but so Apple did pretty well. So good for them. Apparently services did pretty good too. So Apple One, so Apple News Plus, Apple Fitness Plus, etc. Yeah. Okay. Let's move on to this article from the Financial Times. Children struggle to read because of outdated teaching, study says. Most children in lower and middle income countries fail basic literacy tests, according to World Bank-backed report. Outdated teaching methods are restricting children in lower and middle income countries from attaining basic literacy, undermining their opportunities and their nation's economic growth, a new analysis warns. So it goes into it here. I thought this was really interesting here. So a study of early grade reading assessments from over 500,000 students and across 48 countries in 96 languages published in 2024 shows that after 3 years of schooling, more than 90% could not identify letter names, letter sounds, or simple words at expected levels. And then it goes on. The article goes on to say, before the COVID-19 pandemic, 57% of 10-year-olds in these regions could not read or understand a simple story, and this, quote, learning poverty worsened afterwards to 70%, according to some studies. So basically what's going on is it's saying around the world, the COVID crisis deepened this illiteracy rate from 57% to 70%. That's kind of a huge jump. Yeah, 13%. Yikes. And so this is due to basically a COVID lockdown event or effect, as I said. And then stay at home policies, right? Remote learning. What a scam remote learning is. Yeah, I mean, my essentially freshman, sophomore, and almost junior year were all affected by, and junior year were all affected by the pandemic during college. And yeah, I guess like learning at home or whatever, like it's such a scam. All of it. Like, I mean, college for me was essentially just getting a diploma. I mean, I managed to sort of avoid all the hoops that, they made you jump through kind of with the skin of my teeth. I mean, it was pretty tough. I mean, there was a lot of pressure to do everything that they wanted you to do, but I managed to get out of the sort of long-term things that they wanted us to do, luckily. Yeah. But anyways, I mean, let's face it, the COVID crisis the COVID crisis had permanent effects on not only the US economy, but also like literacy rates and stuff. Like, yeah, I mean, Gen Alpha's kind of cooked. I mean, I guess this article didn't really go into this, but when you think about it, like these kids who grew up during the pandemic, they're looking at everyone who's like masked. They're not reading like the little facial cues and stuff that, when they watch people talk or when they see people talking to them, they're not reading the facial cues and everything. And that sort of stunts early growth, like brain matter growth, of course. It's really important to learn as early as you can. There's a huge opportunity cost for learning later, right? Because the way your neurons develop. Of course, they say that if you don't learn a language by 7, you don't ever really learn it. And there's a lot of truth to that, right? And it has to do with sort of the cycles that your brain develops, like gray matter and neurons. Of course, the sort of acceleration of neuron growth kind of wanes after 7. There's another spike at like 13 or 14, and then it's sort of like your brain stops like creating new neurons, kind of plateaus really. So yeah. So for instance, I speak 3 languages. 2 of them I know sort of like by heart. So English and Turkish I learned, since I was, since like 0 years old, you can say, like. And then French came later on for me. So I sort of like half-ass learned French in like when I was 5. And then I wasn't like super exposed to it. I didn't get like a sort of a bilingual education or anything in French. It wasn't, so I didn't like master it. And so I'm pretty good now. I'm like at the B2 level. I took like the TCF Canada. So I'm at a B2 level all around now, which is like good enough per government standards to like immigrate and stuff. But yeah, I mean, there you go. Like, so, I mean, just as a personal example, I mean, my 3rd language, I can't speak it like a real, like, Frenchman or a real Canadian. Like I have this massive sort of like so-called American accent when I speak French. Anyways, so enough about that. But yeah, so that's kind of bad though, right? Like, I mean, COVID is still reverberating into sort of the post-COVID age. Yeah, and then you know what? Like as part of that, sort of like going off of this, they got rid of the SATs and ACTs, right? So that in this case specifically the UC system in California, right? But also these other sort of like Ivy League colleges, they made testing optional for the longest time, right? So this sort of goes in line with, higher illiteracy rates, stay at home, remote learning, academic excellence standards being reduced, right? Yeah, it's so unfortunate. And of course, the idea behind the University of California ending their SAT and ACT requirements in 2020, apparently that was because I guess what they're doing is they're pulling like some sort of a poverty card. They're saying, oh, well, I guess like lower. So their angle is that their official justification is that lower income students don't have access to the same resources in order to basically pass these exams, I guess. But you know what the fallacy there is? Like, on average, the more higher income you are, right, your kids are typically going to be more spoiled. And that's just how it is. Now, it's not everybody, but when things are just handed to like teens and these people taking these SATs and ACTs, but like basically rich kids, when things are just handed to them, they sort of stop putting in the effort because why, right? Well, then why would they study? And because you can't beat, or I mean, metaphysically beat SAT and ACT performance, into into students taking the exam, I mean, there's a lot of like ambition and inner drive that goes into performing well on SATs and ACTs. And you know, ironically, that drive sort of standardizes amongst higher income and lower income students, in my view, right? Because what's the one thing that, okay, well, let me put it like this. A lower income student, I guess, let's pretend for the sake of argument that they don't have the same resources as, you know, a higher income student. Well, they still have the same ambition. They could have the same ambition. They could, and let's face it, like they could go get a SAT study book, let's say, for what, $20? I mean, that's how much I got mine for when I was taking the exam in 2016, in 2017, right? No one's going to convince me that, and you know, I was middle class, but no one's going to convince me that a lower income student wouldn't be able to somehow get their hands on a $20 SAT study book, either through like the library, either through online, or, you know, somehow saving up the cash or getting a job, getting the cash to get a $20 SAT study book. So the logic really doesn't hold. But the reason why I brought this up, the logic doesn't hold up for the UC system. They did a huge disservice to the people that they're quote unquote trying to protect. You're not protecting anybody, because the pay to play people are still gonna pay to play. They're still gonna, I don't know, for example, have their essays written by like top essay writers, right? That's something that higher income, higher echelon students can do that lower echelon can't do. And yet the UC system is now relying on that more than something as standardized as solving pretty basic math problems. The logic isn't holding for the UC system. And it goes into line, like this article here from 2020, mind you, goes into line with what we're seeing here from the Financial Times from 9 hours ago, with illiteracy rates essentially going from 57 to 70% before and after COVID. I mean, it's tough, right? And you see a lot of incompetency now. I mean, look at Boeing. Like, there's always like doors flying out, being ripped out of the plane, off the plane, mid-flight, and everything. I mean, all sorts of disasters. Apparently on X, the new iPhone 17 touchscreen isn't really up to standards. Like, you know, like performance has declined, and you can sort of see why. And it's going to continue to decline as people rely more and more on AI to learn, right? And you know what? You can learn AI, learn using AI as a tool, like sort of the correct way. But you can also use AI to cheat. And so what happens when, you know, these kids who don't know how to read or write, they rely solely on ChatGPT, on Grok, on Claude. What happens when they rely solely on that to get through the education system? And then what happens? Oh crap. Like, now they go work for Boeing, or they work for wherever, and then more doors fly out of planes. Okay. Yeah. And this isn't an argument against the advancement of AI. AI is gonna be there no matter what. Or put more generally, there's always going to be some adverse thing in the environment, right? And then the well, to put it bluntly, the strong make it and the weak don't. And what are the definitions of strong and weak in this context? Well, the ones who don't rely on and don't have bad habits and bad practices and don't learn how to read and write and who are illiterate. Those are the, well, in this sort of analogy here, in this very simple biology analogy here with adverse things in the environment, well, those are the weak, and then the strong are those who, use AI to their advantage or do not fall into the illiterate camp, right? Yeah, it's tough, right? It's tough. So we certainly want to be in the strong camp, in the literate camp, in the awake camp here, for sure. Yeah, things are going to be pretty crazy in the future. So there's that. Okay, so enough about that. Let's move on to our last topic of today. So this was on the front page of the New York Times, how OpenAI uses complex and circular deals to fuel its multi-billion-dollar rise. Sam Altman, the chief executive of OpenAI, says that technological revolutions are driven by more than just technology. They're driven, he argues, by new ways of paying for them. Yeah, so, he goes in, they go into the article here, and they have these figures. So this is between OpenAI and Microsoft. So basically money is just changing hands between all of these big companies like OpenAI, Microsoft, CoreWeave, SoftBank, Oracle, NVIDIA, AMD. So I guess, like, for me, what I wanted to talk about regarding this article is, like, this kind of is comparable to the .com bubble, I feel like. What happened in the .com bubble? Basically, late 1990s surge of investment in internet companies driven by hype and cheap capital rather than real profits. It burst in 2000 when investors realized most startups couldn't make money, wiping out trillions in market value and crashing the NASDAQ by nearly 80%. So here's the thing about the .com bubble, right? We use the internet. It's not like we went into the Stone Age after the .com bubble burst. We still use the internet today, obviously. The internet, the web, right, is more ubiquitous than ever. And yet, the lion's share of these companies, the companies that were sort of alive and riding the coattails of the .com bubble in 1999, in 2000, just folded. They died. Right? So I think the figure was 80% of companies. So the lesson here, I feel like, the takeaway is that there are only ever, like, a few winners and then a whole bunch of losers, right? Companies that fail. And at the time, everyone thought the .com bubble was just going to continue and, everything's going to be okay forever. But obviously that wasn't the correct sentiment to have. And so you sort of compare that to now. And so specifically, let's kind of analyze one of the companies here, CoreWeave, right? So what is CoreWeave? It's a cloud computing company providing GPU infrastructure to OpenAI. So the thing about it is that it's highly leveraged. So basically, it's taking on massive debt to meet demand that might not last if AI growth slows. Okay. So basically, they're betting that AI demand scales indefinitely. So I was thinking about this earlier, right? But so how does ChatGPT work, right? Basic question. You go in, you prompt, and you come up with something, right? And then you get an answer. Of course, the API is really how it's being used by enterprises. They use it sort of in the back end and show the consumer, the customer, basically the results of that, right? Well, sure. So CoreWeave and all these other companies are betting that AI demand is going to scale indefinitely. Okay. Well, what if, let's face it, people are lazy. You know what? Sometimes I look for the shortest, the easiest path to winning, right? So I'm not trying to single anyone out. I'm just trying to say that in general, humans look for the path of least resistance. You can call them lazy, right? We're all lazy to some extent, okay? Just from that angle. But here's the thing. Here's my point with that, though. Like, what happens if consumers get so lazy that they stop prompting altogether? Because when you think about it, it kind of takes some cognitive energy to sit down and be like, okay, oh man, what am I going to think about today? All right, I'm going to write my prompt and okay, I just got a result. Well, what happens when people get prompting fatigue? Well, then AI demand plateaus, right? And what happens when consumers start relying on the startups' products that are sort of derivative from AI? What do I mean by that? What if startups figure out how to fully abstract away prompts from the consumer? Of course, they already have. That's what Byte AI does. And that's what a whole bunch of companies do. But what happens when sort of that cognitive energy expense gets abstracted away from the consumer, and then demand plateaus, right? Especially if this is sort of en masse, right? Mass prompting fatigue. Well, then demand plateaus. Well, then what happens to CoreWeave? Right? Because OpenAI has yet to be profitable. That's the thing. And yet they're signing deals with, CoreWeave, AMD, NVIDIA, SoftBank, Oracle. The deal they signed with Oracle was so big, it's like multiples of the revenue that they generate today of what OpenAI generates today. So so they have to fill those shoes in like a couple of years. I think that's when it's set to sort of start, like the deal between OpenAI and Oracle. So I don't want to bet against AI. It really is going to change everything, and I don't think we've really seen anything yet. But yeah, at the same time, human nature and human psychology is difficult to change, right? Yeah, those are sort of set in stone. as facts, and you sort of have to tiptoe around that, right? And what do I mean by that? Well, basically, when mass prompting fatigue sets in, not everybody's going to make it, probably. So, yeah. Okay. Let's move on to reading some Byte AI. Looks like everything's underbought. Make sure to download Byte AI at byteai.me. That's byteai.me. Byte AI is a data aggregation tool. Basically aggregates news sentiment for stocks in your portfolio, as well as technical indicators. Of course, it's not a financial advisor, and past success doesn't guarantee future results, but nonetheless, it's a very useful tool to inform your trades. So let's look at Amazon. Okay, I got logged out. I was in there for a while. Okay, underbought. Amazon shows classic, just double check everything's there. Shows several classic underbought signals against a backdrop of constructive sentiment. The RSI is around 45, so just 5 below the baseline, indicating room to the downside, but with potential for mean reversion. The price sits near the lower Bollinger Band, and the MACD is close to the signal line, suggesting only a mild bearish tilt rather than a decisive downtrend. Bollinger bandwidth is relatively narrow, implying subdued volatility and the likelihood of a squeeze back to the mid-band. New sentiment remains modestly bullish. Strong Q3 results with net sales up 13% year over year, AI-driven optimism, and raised price targets. So we kind of talked about this in the beginning of the show. Recent coverage portrays Amazon as trading on a constructive footing today after strong quarterly results and ongoing analyst optimism. Already underbought. Underbought, huh? What does that mean? Well, that means that I'm going to make a trade. Oh, man. It's kind of up. Well, I don't actually want to I don't actually want to buy Amazon right now. That's the problem. It's too high. I kind of want to sell. Yeah. So that's the thing. That's why Byte AI is not like that deeply integrated into your real like Robinhood or Fidelity portfolio, because right now it doesn't actually do the trades for you. And yeah, so it gave a lot of good reasons why it's underbought, but I actually want to sell only because of the rally. Yeah, so I'm actually gonna sell about $100. Okay, so I took some profits there, kind of independently from everything else. Maybe we can follow Byte AI to the T with Meta or Microsoft here, depending on what it says. Okay, Meta shows an extremely oversold condition with RSI at 21. Oh, wow, that is extremely low. Very, very low compared to 50. Suggests a potential mean reversion to the upside. The price is near the lower Bollinger Band with a relatively narrow bandwidth, indicating a compression phase that often precedes a bounce. Although the MACD remains close to the signal line with a mild bearish tilt, and today's and recent declines imply risk-off sentiment, the combination of stress oversold reading and proximity to key support creates a favorable setup for selective accumulation or a controlled re-entry rather than a full-blown buy and hold exposure. Okay. Yeah, so let's sell some. Oh wait, hold up. No, let's buy some Meta. Yeah, okay. Ooh, I like this dip. So let's do that. Let's take that $100 we pulled from Amazon and put them into Meta. Nice. Okay. Okay. Okay, there we go. Microsoft. Microsoft is signaling a tradable underbought setup. The RSI is around 45, indicating room to move higher before overbought levels, and the MACD is nearly the same as the signal line with a slight bullish tilt, suggesting limited downside risk and potential upside. The price sits near the lower Bollinger Band with a narrow bandwidth, implying a squeeze and a likely mean reversion towards the mid-band rather than an immediate breakout. Today's negative 2.92% action contrasts with the positive weekly and monthly momentum, and fundamentals remain solid with a backlog of about 51% to 392 billion and a strong AI cloud demand supporting durable upside. New sentiment is broadly neutral. Alrighty. Well, Microsoft underbought. Okay. And it's down today. Oh, yeah. I like this dip right here. Okay. So let's buy 100. Maybe I'll change that. As in, I'll change what's going on. I'll change some of the prompting so that it sort of cares a little bit more, puts a little bit more emphasis on like whether or not it's down today or up today, because I sort of had to veto it for Amazon with the sole reasoning that it was up 11%. So I think I'm going to change that so it sort of follows, I guess my logic there, so that it could have said sell today. Yeah. Well, that's why we're doing the show, aren't we? Byte AI. Okay. Okay. Well, you know what? I think that's all I want to do today. Make sure to download Byte AI on the App Store. It's also available as a web app, stock analysis tool. Today's Friday. So have a good weekend, everybody. Have a great weekend, in fact. And I will see you on Monday. Bye-bye.